Yeah, thank you very much for the nice introduction. Welcome, everyone. Good to see so many people here together listening here to what we have to say. And how the industrial metaverse transformed the automotive industry. Yeah, that's a lot of interesting words in that, transformation, metaverse. Yeah, so maybe let's first get started. What is the metaverse? Anyone of you having teenagers at home? Yeah? So probably you know they spend a lot of time in the metaverse, at least mine do. Yeah, so you might have heard of Minecraft, Roblox, stuff like that. So these are metaverse. This is for games. Yeah. How does it work? So for the ones that don't have teenagers at home, that educate them. In fact, you're controlling an avatar that is traveling in a virtual world. You can interact, you can build stuff, you can share stuff, you can fight, and especially you can forget about homework because it's very immersive. And so you're getting kind of distracted from the real world. If we now talk about the industrial metaverse, the good story first, it's not about forgetting the real world, it's about making the real world a better world. So what are we actually talking of in the context of industrial metaverse? Instead of avatars, we have digital twins. And these digital twins interact with each other. Sounds simple, but there are a number of challenges to cope with. So first of all, these digital twins might have been built for a specific domain. Yeah, so think of a digital twin of a product and of a digital twin of a production. In the metaverse, they need to somehow interact. It's not very wise how to do this. Another aspect, you see digital twins having different levels of detail. Yeah, so you might have a digital twin of a gearbox in a car, and you might have a digital twin of a complete car. So we have different levels of detail. Also, you might have different horizons for these digital twins. There might be a digital twin that describes your zero-emission initiatives, a digital twin of the supply chain, and you might have a digital twin that tries to foresee what is going to happen tomorrow in the next hour. Yeah? So all of these somehow need to interact and be part of the metaverse. So we're going to touch a few of these examples in this presentation, but first of all, let me dive into how we see that manufacturing and the world develops here. So we've seen a revolution on how we produce cars or products in general. We have advanced robotics, we have 3D printing, we have IoT. So many technologies that really change the way how we manufacture. And at the same time, we see when we design products that we have more and more complex products, and these tools help us to cope with this challenge. And therefore, it allows us to improve quality, to reduce costs, to more customize the product. So it opens a lot of opportunities. And at the same time, when we think about manufacturing and design of products, we also need to think outside of the walls of the factories. So you expected that, you're all logistics guys, so you know what is missing. So from that perspective, you also need to involve the outside world, parties with which you collaborate. Yeah, that might be done using digital marketplaces, might be done by using collaboration platforms, so that you are able to, in real time, interact with your collaboration partners. At the same time, we see a movement when we look at the life cycle of a product. We see companies changing from being a product company into service companies. So this means that we also need to look into the life cycle of the product, because now part of the offering is how the product is being used. We are only selling the value out of the product. I mean, not everyone is going in that direction, doesn't have to. But there is also, when you start thinking about these net zero initiatives, you need to consider the full supply chain to really understand and to really work on that. And so from that perspective, you need to combine design of products, manufacturing, and the corresponding supply chain. And there was really, in the last years, Chris, you mentioned it, yeah, we've seen so many disruptions, things. I mean, we from logistics always said that supply chain plays an important role, but the last 3 years have proven us correct. Yeah, so that's a good time for that. And so when we now look at the portfolio of Siemens and Siemens Digital Industries, there is a great footprint of Siemens for product design. Many products are being designed within Siemens solutions, based typically in Teamcenter, and then building up products on that. And at the same time, digital twins of production sites, yeah, with an integration into the production facilities, getting IoT data integrated into that. Yeah, and as said, we need to integrate into that the digital twin of supply chains to really be able to model and see the consequences and to see end-to-end effects. And let me give you a few examples of that. So first of all, when you start thinking from supply chain and logistics, there is some clear interaction between manufacturing, digital manufacturing, and supply chains. Yeah? Supply chain is there to keep the production running. That's quite obvious. Yeah? So there is some interaction. Also, when we now look at the production design, so how do we produce a product, there is clearly an influence. The supply chain needs to ensure that we really have the right product at the right point in time, in the right quality, you know all of these quite well. So there is also a clear interaction here, which is not very common. Yeah, so this is something that is arising. And now even if we think about the product in itself, so if you think about a designed product, approximately 80% of the carbon footprint of this product's life cycle is being determined during the design phase. 80%. So may I ask you in the audience, who of you has been involved into the early product design process to elaborate on scenarios or consequences of specific product variants? May you raise your hand? Okay. Thanks. Yeah, so I mean, that's quite common. But really, if you think about what is being determined in the early phase and how much you can handle and mitigate in the later stages, it comes very wise that this is a really necessary step to do that. And yeah, in the following, I give you 4 examples how we at Siemens integrate these different areas into a metaverse, into digital twins. So first of all, let me start with a product design example and sustainability of the corresponding supply chain. Now imagine that we are a component designer. So we have a bigger product. We need to talk about a component that somehow needs to be designed, and we have different variants that we want to analyze. So we see, okay, we can change the material, we see the costs, and we see the carbon footprint of the product. When we change the material, we see how the carbon footprint, the cost will change. You might even not change the material, but also how you design, how you build this component, which has an effect. You need to think about the right machinery on how to produce this product, right sizing, yeah? And also you might consider, where should we produce it? There might be some low-cost countries, more higher-cost countries, but taking sustainability into consideration, some of these things might change. In this example here, it turns out to be Sweden as the optimal location. Could be, for example, they have a lot of renewable energy there, so this helps you in reducing your carbon footprint. So this is an example that looks very easy. We didn't talk about digital twins of our supply chain, but in fact, to do these calculations, you need to integrate. And how are we doing this? There's I mentioned already before, Teamcenter. the product where you design products, in fact. And we have the bill of material there. And a bill of material has multiple layers. You have different components and subcomponents. And this information is available here, and this is the world where the product designer is working in. And if we now want to consider the carbon footprint of the corresponding supply chain, somehow this bill of material data needs to be handed over to the supply chain's digital twin. In our case, it's Supply Chain Suite, a product from Siemens Digital Logistics, where we do the calculation of costs, of transport costs, of carbon footprint. This sounds easy, but if you think about what is the level of detail that we have for a BOM, I mean, we need to consider the packaging. We need to consider what kind of container is being used. How many pallets do I get into this container regarding weight and several other restrictions? Where will it travel? What will be the supply chain network, in fact? And all of this needs to be brought together to make a digital twin of the product and a digital twin of the supply chain talk to each other. And this is one of the challenges I mentioned before. How can these talk with each other? And this is what we've done here. It's just being launched in December as a new extension to Teamcenter and Product Cost Management for the calculation of the carbon footprint. Another example, completely different area. We're talking about electronic components. So, I mean, everybody knows all products are getting smarter and smarter, which means more dependency on electronic components. But what have we seen just in the last years? What happened? We see shortages, we see the wrong material available at the wrong point in time. We've seen these bullwhip effects that are the consequences of these fluctuations. Yeah, we saw a huge downturn and then a ramp up, which led to these bullwhip effects. Yeah, so there is a lot of disruption in this area. So just some interesting numbers in that dimension. So what we see that most of the companies increase the complexity of their products. More and more details, features go into products. At the same point, we see these sourcing issues that cause delays because material is not available as expected. We've seen backlogs of years and plus. Yeah, looks like communist times. And we also see that in the supply area, collaboration was a big issue. Almost 80% mentioned this as a problem. And now when we think about these areas here, we see, if I translate it into the metaverse picture, we have different digital twins that lack to collaborate. We see silos. And to make this a little bit more transparent, yeah, we see in this area many different sources that are being used. Yeah, very often it's Excel. This information is not being updated. It's not connected with other sources. There might be external sources. Quite often this data is only looking in the past and not into the future. And worst of all, it's not consistent. So depending on which data source you use and try to connect, you lose consistency. So to help here, 2 years ago, Siemens has acquired SupplyFrame. This is a provider of design-to-source intelligence solution. So what we're doing here is in the area of electronics. The nice thing is that there are unique numbers for electronic components. So we have a database here of 600 million parts that are available there. They are being used by different design engineers to design their products. 12 million are using that. And we're gathering all that information, roughly around 20 billion signals per month that are being integrated, collected, and put together into consistent data sources to allow for resilience in a supply chain, to make different data sources, different digital twins talk to each other. And this platform utilizes AI, for sure, to look into the future. So what will happen when we see products that might contain components that have end of life, that have limited number of suppliers, that have seen disruptions in the recent past. Yeah? So all of this information is available to the product designer at his fingertips. Let's move to another example where we combine more from a tactical perspective, production design and supply chain planning. So we might see that there are versatile models of production facilities, of warehouses, where we can simulate processes. And at the same time, we have different supply chain scenarios. And now one wise thing to do from a Siemens perspective is to combine the two, because one is the input for the other, and at the same point, again, the output for the other. So what we have combined here is plant simulation that allows you to model the processes within a plant with supply chain planning and optimization to produce scenarios. And then you can start simulating these scenarios. So we see trucks arriving, we see what is going to happen, unloading, we see where do we have bottlenecks, what is going to happen. I see you all, this is very immersive, yeah, it's nice to watch it, yeah, but there's also a business value behind, yeah, because you can really see what is going to happen tomorrow, or maybe in a week, or what happens if we change the production between different facilities. So let's look at a further example. So we have, when we talk about manufacturing and supply chain operations, so we're now switching to a very operational context, where we have on the one hand side from transport management systems, from purchase order management systems, we have information about the progress, about the achieved milestones for shipments that we have or for orders that have been placed. And at the other hand, we have systems that help in schedule production. And what is very nearby to do is to bring the information from each of these digital twins into the right context. Let me give you an example. So when we look at the status of a shipment, this is the right level of detail, the information that the logistics guys need, want, can handle. But getting to know that there is an issue in customs somewhere in Asia is not the information that a production scheduler who's responsible for production needs. He just doesn't know what to do with it. So you need to translate it into the other world to make a consistent metaverse. And this is what we're doing in this use case. We name it supply material tracking. So in fact, we're combining the information from the transport management system, the achieved milestones, the updated milestones, into the production scheduling. So whenever we see a delay or change there, the production planner and scheduler can immediately see what does it mean. Do I have to change something? Do I have to care at all? Do I need to reschedule from scratch? So this is the use case, very operational use case that we have in place here. So now, let me come to the conclusion. So when we talk about the industrial metaverse, where does it help? We've touched the topic of silos that we need to get rid of them, just to be quite blunt. And many people talk about end-to-end. So it depends on your perspective, what you understand by end-to-end. But really, if you combine digital twins from different areas and really go into that industrial metaverse, you really see changes that you make here and really in the language and in the world of other parties within your supply chain. So these are then these end-to-end dependencies. Why do you want to have that? Because then you come from reactive behavior to active, proactive behavior. Yeah? So this will help here. And then I've read a nice article about Barney. Anyone knows what is Barney? The successor of VUCA, so volatility, uncertainty, and so on. Here we're talking about brittle, anxious, nonlinear, and incomprehensible. Yeah, so it tries to describe what we've seen, because Corona pandemic was not something about volatility. It was complete disruption. And one of the things that experts say might help you here, besides having the industrial metaverse, is your intuition. Yeah, because this helps you understand maybe things that haven't been modeled, that haven't been considered, and to make the world a better world by changing the real world. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Christian. We're just going to take some questions now, so if you want to grab it and grab a seat. We do have some questions. If you have some questions from the floor, please raise your hand. We have some microphones. We can ask you to ask your questions, but I'll take my prerogative as the moderator to ask the first few questions to Christian. You talked about silos. And and data silos. It's a big thing. We're going to cover data issues later on today and tomorrow, but we know it's a challenge for organizations. I'm going to ask you with a simple question, and to keep it easy for you, how do you remove data silos?
The best idea or the best strategy is always to create a value out of it. Yeah, and the example that I brought from Supply Frame, for example, where you really have these data silos that really prevent you from being successful, from having product go lives, because lack of collaboration. You see that 80% mentioned this as being a lack. So I think this should be a good argumentation why you should get rid of these data silos. Other aspects, I think I also have covered this agility, how to react fast. Because if you have these data silos, you always need to throw your data over the fence to the other department. Someone needs to catch it, and to continue. So it's also time. Yeah? So if you want to be fast, you need to get rid of these data silos, from my perspective.
And it will take time, you're right. The other issue around using the data, capturing the insights, making sure you can use it and having early access to those insights. What are some of the positive impacts, the wider positive impacts of utilizing that data?
There is, as soon as you have data is the gold of the digital age. It offers a lot of opportunities to learn, to train, also to train AI, and really to understand what has happened and why did it happen, and how can we prevent or change it in the future.
Yeah, it's amazing. And in terms of digital twins, because obviously you've got the data, great, but you've got digital twins and utilizing that in the real world, how can it help in terms of streamlining information flow, collaboration? Can you give us some examples of how that's been utilized?
Yeah, we've seen in these examples that I brought, it was quite a lot about bringing these digital twins together to create value out of that. Yeah, and it's a journey. Yeah, we're not yet there. This is something that we're just embarking on, and this metaverse picture coming from the gaming industry is quite a nice picture that you can transfer to the industrial universe, metaverse. So that's I guess,
I suppose that. Okay, we've got a couple of questions. We've got one over there. Feel free to raise your hand. I can't see.
Yes, my name is Hartmut Haubrich from company Inform. Concerning silos and digital twins connecting to each other, what's your perspective on the Catena X initiative? I am under the impression that might play a role in that field.
Thank you very much for that question. You realize that I had 4 examples. Example number 5 has been removed. It was Catena X, because I saw there is a presentation. Not sure if you're part of that. So I think tomorrow is a session about Catena X. And Siemens is also participating there. I think that's really an important role, because so far we are focusing on the data within the company, which is already a challenge. But when you start sharing between partners in the supply chain, data sovereignty becomes more and more important. Yeah? And if we see that more and more companies that have this competition. Sometimes they cooperate, sometimes they collaborate. And in that aspect, data and how you share it is a vital and very important part. So personally, I think that's a very important initiative. I hope a lot that this will be a success for Europe and Germany as well. So it is an important. Thanks for asking that question.
And just to add to that, one of the key things we spoke about previously was about trust within the organization, because you've got the different silos, right? And then extending that trust beyond the organization to all the other organizations right along the value chain. Now, I don't know if it's a long-term process in developing trustworthy conversations and trustworthy collaboration, right? And that's going to be a challenge, right?
Yeah, and I think it's good that you're mentioning it. When we look how to handle this bunny world, I think having trust between partners in a supply chain is essential. You can create scenarios, and think about that, but really in the end, you might see disruptions that you never have dreamt of. I mean, who would have thought that we will not fly for a year? I had never expected that, or that you can have a ship that blocks the complete supply chain between Asia and Europe. And a solution out of that, I think, is having trust between partners in a supply chain. Although it's not that easy, obviously. And Catena X should hopefully help here.
Yes, it's a great enabler, isn't it, to allow that trust to foment and actually make sure it happens. Just a wider question. Sorry, go on, one question at the back, I think.
Alex Stahl from Venturis. It's interesting that you're just talking about trust, because around data security is something I'm very interested to hear your opinion on. You've got a huge amount of supplier data, product data, but creating trust in supply chains is very often about creating trust of data security as much as trust between partners. What are you guys doing to handle that, and what's your data security, considering you've got so much information centralized?
I mean, you need to differentiate. There is a lot of data that is not in the cloud for various reasons. As you've learned, I'm a cloud enthusiast, so maybe I don't agree with that because we've seen many companies struggling with the security of their internal IT. I'm not saying that cloud providers do not do mistakes, but it's a different focus here. I mean, there is the worst thing that you can do is thinking you're safe. This is the first step to fail. There are certifications that you can go for that help you, at least in crisis, behave properly and have some plan or at least an idea of the crisis. But I completely agree that in this connected world, and that especially the dependency on on this data, on this connectivity, it needs to be an essential part. And I'm happy that initially, I'm not sure if you've seen it, I have been introduced as the head of cybersecurity of Siemens, which I'm apparently not. But in fact, so I have been ISO 27001 certified several times now. And that's something I think all of us need to have an eye on and should rely on experts doing there.
We've got a couple of minutes left. I've got another question over there. Sorry.
Thank you. Mike Wagner, Epolog. On a level from 1 to 10, 10 being the industrial metaverse fully established, on which level do you see us right now? And where do you see the biggest hurdles in terms of intercompany or intra-company wise?
There are many hurdles, and I'd say the journey just has started. So already knowing what will give us pain in the future is really hard. But really, from my perspective, we are at 2 or 3. So really at the beginning of a journey, and I know you're doing a lot in that area. I think this will keep us busy for a while. I'm not saying that this is the solution for 2030 or 2035. We will see for sure more developments and more ideas coming into. But honestly, I really like that picture of the metaverse, especially when you have kids, because you can talk with your kids about what you're doing. We're doing metaverse, so you get explained what Minecraft and stuff like that is. So at least it's good to have it.
It becomes relatable, right? One of the things, just on a last question, because we're running out of time, but the outcomes. So it's great that we've got digital twins, metaverse, all of that technology, but you mentioned sustainability, and I just want to finish off on that. What are the outcomes, do you think, with regard to sustainability, not just obviously the emissions you mentioned, but on a broader aspect of better sustainability?
Yeah. I mean, part of the model is that the metaverse or digital twins help you determine the footprint. I mean, a digital twin is useful to simulate and try alternatives, but it also helps you unveil information that is otherwise hidden from you. Yeah, like okay, you might have a truck that was driving from A to B. How to get the carbon footprint? Yeah, I mean you can ask for the fuel consumption, yeah, or you can make use of a model and see what might have influenced this. Yeah, so a digital twin also helps you understanding reality better. Yeah. And also with respect to sustainability in understanding where this comes from. Yeah, where do we produce our carbon footprint? Yeah, and this will help. And also when we look into this change that I mentioned in the beginning, that we're getting more and more the life cycle into the focus, and this will create more focus on spare parts, on availability, but also how do we handle waste? How can we make this product recyclable, the material that is part of that? And here also the digital twin, I think, can help a lot in becoming more sustainable and creating what we're all aiming for, a circular economy.
Yeah. Fantastic, fantastic. Well, on that very positive note, let me just thank you for your insights and appreciate your time and effort in here. I'm going to ask Chris to come back on, but in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Christian Smith. Thank you.
Thank you.